I think we can all agree that it was pretty painful to watch this scene in Avengers Infinity War.
Where is she?
He mourns.
Gamora. He came back with the Soul Stone. And she did it.
Okay, Quill, you gotta cool it right now. You understand? Don't engage. We almost got this off!
Tell me she's lying.
Asshole! Tell me you didn't do it! No, you didn't! Quill! Stop! Stop! It's coming! I got it!
Tony and Peter almost had the gauntlet off of Thanos' hand. But then little Peter Quill had to come mess everything up.
I mean, if you want to talk about whose fault it was, it's a what's his name there? Star-Lord. You know, he's the one who should have been turned into Stardust. He got all emotional about his girlfriend or some and then blew the whole thing up, and then they had him. But anyway, glad you got your relationship sorted. Half the universe is dead.
And I've seen tons of memes, comments, and videos that deal with the fallout of Star-Lord's actions, condemning what he did and how stupid, irresponsible, immature, idiotic, brainless, foolish, half-witted, selfish, unintelligent, senseless, misguided, reckless, tactless, careless, heedless, negligent, thoughtless, foolhardy, unwise, ill-considered, rash, and all-around not a good idea what he did was. But I'm here to tell you, I'm on his side. Hey everyone, I'm Bradley and welcome to Zlangle. Before I get into it, why don't you take a second to like and subscribe? It's free, it helps me out, and studies show that helping people can increase your lifespan and health. And I do appreciate it. So I'll admit, when I first saw Avengers Infinity War and Star-Lord ruin their chances of getting the glove away from Thanos, it was a moment that made everything seem hopeless and bleak. If only he had waited 1 minute for his allies to finish, so Thanos' power would have been reduced dramatically. But after another moment that made me think, what were you thinking? Where Doctor Strange hands over the Time Stone, and after the film finished, and I had more time to think about everything that had transpired in Infinity War, I realized that Star-Lord was an easy target to blame for the ending of the film, but that we shouldn't judge too quickly. There are two main reasons why I say we should just leave Star-Lord alone and let him mourn for Gamora. Oh well, except for the whole, you know. Reason number one, you might have done it too. I know, it's easy to say, no, I wouldn't. And that's fair, you might not have. But you also haven't experienced being kidnapped as a child by alien pirates, threatened that you'll be eaten alive, almost killed a dozen times, finally found an awesome alien woman that you might actually connect with, who happens to look like a hot, dangerous green version of Zoe Saldana, and then is murdered right after being kidnapped herself by her giant purple alien father who is now kneeling in front of you, totally but temporarily incapacitated. And you're gonna tell me that you wouldn't want to do something? Especially if you just found out that this evil, cruel person killed the love of your life. To me, it's hard for me to judge his passionate, impulsive actions, however much it might have screwed up the plan of attack that he and the others had to try to take Thanos down for good. And you know who else probably wouldn't judge? A man named Tony Stark. You might remember, but the MCU Tony has had his fair share of trouble regulating his emotions. Remember his little scuffle with Rhodey in Iron Man 2? Or how about when Rhodey got shot down by the Vision's laser blast in Captain America Civil War?
Sorry.
And Sam didn't even do anything. But most of all, Tony, in Civil War, found out that his parents were murdered that night in 1991, instead of just dying in a car accident. But he also simultaneously found out that the person who murdered them was Bucky, Captain America's friend. And he also found out, in this scene of revelations, that Captain America had kept that secret from him. Whether or not Steve really knew what Bucky had done, or if he just knew that Hydra had done it, and merely had suspicions that they had used the Winter Soldier to do it, Tony was clearly not happy about the situation.
I just did you know. Yes.
And what did he do? And this was even when his parents, Howard and Maria Stark, had been dead for 25 years. The wounds had mostly healed, as much as they could be, the closure was done, and he had moved on. But with Star-Lord, these wounds were just created. Remember those huge revelations that Tony had in that one scene? Well, Peter had to deal with finding out Gamora was murdered, and the fact that Thanos did it, all at once. His whole world just changed. So if you were going to be upset that Peter went crazy and started wailing on Thanos, then you should also be outraged at Tony for trying to beat up, or maybe even kill, Steve Rogers and Bucky.
Let's kick his ass.
Then again, Tony losing control of his anger and unleashing spontaneous vengeance upon his transgressors didn't exactly cause the annihilation of 50% of the population of the entire universe like Star-Lord did. Or maybe not. This is the biggest reason why you shouldn't blame Star-Lord for what happened. It was
all part of the plan.
Doctor Strange was floating over there watching Avengers Endgame before any of us. Lucky. And remember what he saw?
Hey, what was that?
Went forward in time to view alternate futures, to see all the possible outcomes of the coming conflict.
How many did you see?
14,605,000.
How many did we win?
One. Out of all of the possibilities he saw only one in which we win. Now, what does he or Tony mean by win? Well, we'll get to that in a minute. But first, let's consider the fact that he only saw 14,605,000 possible futures. That sounds like a lot, but really if you think about every action of every character and every possible outcome, 14 million isn't really that many. There are billions, if not trillions or more outcomes that could possibly happen. So that one possibility might not be the only possibility, but obviously their odds aren't looking great. Okay, so now, what do they mean by win? I personally think that Tony and Steven have very different definitions. I think we can assume that Tony means win as in not letting Thanos get all the stones and kill half the universe. Because of course, by all accounts, that's what he was told would happen. Those were the stakes he was fighting for. So it's natural that when he asks,
How many did we win?
he's referring to beating Thanos. But that clearly didn't happen. And it would seem that the Avengers and the Guardians of the Galaxy had regrettably fallen into one of the 14,605,000 of the losing outcomes. Except for a couple of things. Earlier in the film, Doctor Strange made a point to tell Tony that,
But you have to understand, if it comes to saving you, or the kid, or the time stone, I will not hesitate to let either of you die. I can't, because the universe depends on it.
and then later in the film he gives up the stone to save him. This was not some character arc in which Strange learns the value of a human life, nor did his fondness of Stark grow. We know this because of two lines that Strange tells Tony after he gives over the Power Stone.
Why would you do that?
We're in the end game now.
And
There was no other way.
unless there's some big surprise in Endgame that changes everything we think we know, it's logical to come to the conclusion that Strange's one scenario he saw in which they win probably necessitated Tony being alive, and included himself giving over the stone, Thanos going to Wakanda and getting the last stone, and subsequently snapping away half the universe. He viewed all of those future events before they fought him on Titan, meaning that he probably knew how it was all going to go down. He probably even saw his own death occurring because of the snap. But since he knew the route they had to take to be able to win eventually, and that it actually included Thanos temporarily winning, he just followed the path that would lead toward the one successful future. And what is my point in talking about all this? My point is that if it's true that at least right now, because of the events and choices that were made, especially by Doctor Strange, since he was the only one who knew, that the Avengers are on the right path of causality, then that would mean that Star-Lord freaking out and ruining their chances of getting the gauntlet separated from Thanos, and seemingly being a reason he succeeded in wiping out half of existence, was actually absolutely necessary to winning in the end. Because if Star-Lord hadn't done that, or had he done anything else, then that would be part of one of the failure timelines, and Doctor Strange wouldn't have had a reason to save Stark, give up the stone, or have reason to believe that they were in the endgame. So while on the surface Star-Lord looks like an idiot for screwing everything up, it's hard to blame him for losing control while confronting his girlfriend's murderer while he was helpless, and he had the high ground. And even if you still blame him, you should thank him because him doing that just put the universe on the right track, and will hopefully be saved in Endgame. Though it's not a guarantee. So thanks for watching, everyone. I really appreciate it. If you have any thoughts on this topic, or have a topic you might want me to cover in a future video, then tell me in the comments. I'm open to suggestions. So anyway, until next time, 'nuff said, and Excelsior!